Gentlemen, thank you for taking part in these sessions, the main purpose of which is to ensure that when I'm incapable or dead, the AK's publicity will continue without a hiccup. So these sessions will focus almost exclusively on equipping you to create and prepare for printing A5 flyers and images of various sizes for our new website, which is currently being assembled. I strongly recommend that you download a hard copy of this voiceover script. Some things will be clearer if you see them in print, and it will allow you to pause the video to do stuff without losing the thread. I'll put it on Box, and you need to go to Files, which is the symbol on the left-hand side, and it's the folder called Design Group. I've added red boxes in this text to indicate when you need to do something. These may be good points to pause the video while you work on stuff, because I can't predict exactly how long to put a pause in. I'll try and add some irritating sounds to correspond with where the red boxes appear in the script. So I'm just going to bash on, and you pause when you need to. Incidentally, if you're not familiar with YouTube, you can pause and start at any point during a YouTube video just by pressing the space bar. If you need to go back or to go forward, you can use your arrow keys on your keyboard. For the last few years, we've been using Leaflet Frog as our printers. They do a good job quickly and will post the finished prints to any address in the UK. Postage is included in the price, which currently is £27 for 200 A5s. I pay Leaflet Frog as I order stuff, and Mark reimburses me promptly. Within a couple of days of them being printed, the leaflets are in a porch in Kendal, Cornwall, or Abergavenny. A5, as you know, is 148 millimeters by 210 millimeters and is part of an international paper size system ranging from 4A0 to A10, in which each decrement is exactly the half of the previous larger size. For our purposes, this has the advantages of being able to scale our designs to smaller and larger sizes, knowing they'll still fit proportionately. I always design flyers at A4 format. This allows me to adapt the image to A5 or to A3 without loss of quality. Before we start, I should say that I've never been formally taught Photoshop or Photoshop Elements. I've learnt what I've learnt because I had to get something done for which I was getting paid. The Photoshop family as a program is enormous and enormously powerful. Few people will know it inside out, and practically every command in the program has two or more ways of being actioned. People have their preferred methods, which may puzzle others who've adopted different habits or have been taught properly. Incidentally, there are loads of videos about Photoshop Elements on YouTube, which you can explore and which will quickly qualify you to teach me. Except I'll be looking out of the window, picking my nose, and thinking of spring and large women. The other important thing to point out at the outset is that I'm working on a Mac computer, whereas I imagine most of you will have PCs. This means that what I see in my workspace may be different from yours. Sadly, I've so little experience of PCs that I can't help you over these hurdles, and you will have to translate into PC anything that is peculiarly Mac. This especially applies to keystrokes, which are commands you can execute on your keyboard to save you navigating menus located elsewhere in your workspace. It's worth trying to remember these keystrokes, especially for more common commands. When you select an action from one of the top menus in your workspace, you'll see a keystroke equivalent on the right for most commands. Some of these you'll probably know already from ordinary computer use. For example, Command A to select all, Command C to copy, and Command V to paste, etc. The more you can learn, the quicker will be your workflow. We'll begin by opening Photoshop Elements, selecting a workspace, setting up a page and a preset, looking at the tools layout and getting familiar with the layers. We'll import images and manipulate them. They can't touch you for it, and that will probably do for the first session. So if you're sitting comfortably, click to open Photoshop Elements. Your screen should look something like this. Click on Photo Editor, then File, top left, and New and Blank File in the drop-down and sub-menus. As we'll be using A4 in portrait format a lot, we'll save this as a preset when we've entered the values, so we don't have to fill in the details again. A4 size is 210 millimeters wide by 297 millimeters high. The resolution for images to be printed needs to be 300 pixels per inch PPI minimum. Images for the web can be much lower, typically 72 PPI, which is the resolution of your monitor's screen. But we'll get to that in a later session. Give the file a distinctive name of your choice. Select International Paper in document type and save it as a preset. I suggest naming it A4 Portrait in preset name. You should now have your blank page on screen. At this stage, I like to adjust the program setting to suit me. The default settings, also called preferences, don't always bring up the rulers or set the decimal units we're working in, and I don't like the pale cyan color of the guides. If you're happy with these, as you were, and stand by your beds. To bring the rulers up, click on View at the top and click on Rulers and on Guides in the drop-down menu. To change the color of the guides and alter the units, click on the program's name, top left, and select Settings. In Units and Rulers, convert all the inches to millimeters. Don't change type from points, and don't touch the resolution settings at the bottom. Still in Settings, select Guides and Grid, and select a color of your choice. I use light red because I find the cyan difficult to see. Having a vertical center line to work to is important, especially when adding text. I always start by establishing one. Click on the left-hand vertical ruler and drag a guide across to the center of your page. If you do this carefully, you'll feel the line trigger a detent near the middle of the page, which automatically attracts it to the dead center line. You'll feel the same detent if you drag a horizontal line down to the middle. You can remove a guide by grabbing it with the Move tool, the plus sign, and simply drag it off the field of play. You can hide and show guides by toggling Command semicolon, and of course you can clear guides by going back up to View. Now we'll look at layers, which are one of the most important features of this program. As the name suggests, a layer is a part of the image which appears on top of one below. You can have as many layers as you want. You can move the order of the layers. You can duplicate layers, alter their opacity, hide them, lock them, and make any changes you like to a layer without altering other layers. Understanding them is crucial to creating flyers. Text layers behave slightly differently from the image layers, and we'll be dealing with text in a later session. Layers appear in a column on the right of your workspace. If these are not showing now, actually you've only got one layer at this stage. If this is not showing, then go down to the bottom right of your page and click on Layers. Top right, you can find the Layers and Groups icons and other drop-down menu items. We'll mainly be looking at the first, the icon looking like a single page with the top right corner turned down, which brings up a new layer. We'll deal in a later session with the next icon, which looks like a stack of pages and puts several layers into a group. In this slide, I've marked the top line A, and the two icons I mentioned are here. The first icon adds a new layer, the second collects selected layers into a group. In the line marked B, the first icon that looks like an eye hides or makes visible the layer. The second icon links several selected layers together. The third rectangle is the actual icon of the layer, and this is followed by an editable text box in which you can give the layer a name. The fourth icon locks, unlocks the layer. That is, toggles between two states, locked and opaque, or unlocked and transparent. Click on the layer icon to bring up a new layer. Double-click on the Layer 1 label until the text is highlighted and type in square. Note, I always use caps these days for my eyes, but you don't have to. Also, you can name or rename the layer at any stage, or not name it at all for that matter, but when you've dozens of layers, clear labeling helps. Select the rectangular marquee tool, which is next to the Move tool, the one with the plus sign up on the left, and drag across the new layer to make a dotted outline of a rectangle. Click on Edit and drag down to Fill Selection to bring up a sub-menu, Fill Layer. Click on Use and select Color. A color picker should appear, and you move the small circle to select your color. I chose red. Click OK in each box, and your rectangle should now be colored. Now reselect the marquee tool, and this time keep the Shift key depressed as you draw your next box lower down on the same layer. This time the box should be a perfect square. Color this square as you did the rectangle. Note, this constraining function of the depressed Shift key operates with several tools and across different applications. It's used when selecting items from a list, for example, by selecting the first item and then scrolling down and clicking on the last, whilst keeping the Shift key down. All items in between the first and last are selected. We'll come back to this constraining function later in this session. We've now got a square and a rectangle on our layer named Square, so we'll delete the rectangle. With the marquee tool, draw a rectangle around the top rectangle. You can find Delete in the Edit menu, but the backspace key on your keyboard does the same thing and is quicker. Note, sometimes it will be too quick, and you'll delete something you didn't mean to. You have two safety nets. The first keystroke, which undoes the immediately previous action, is Command Z. The second safety net is History, which you'll find in the Window menu at the very top of your screen. Here should be a list of all the actions you made in the current session, and you can click on any stage to reset your work to that stage. You can simply click on the last action if you want to go back to where you were. Finally, I'm going to stress the vital importance of saving your work at regular intervals as you work. If you've done that diligently and you get into deep trouble, you can go up to Edit and select Revert. This will restore your work to the last time you saved, which may mean you've only lost 20 minutes of work instead of 2 hours. Now it's an appropriate time to save your work. Create an unambiguously named folder on your computer. Select Save As in the File menu. Give the file a name, for example, Session 001, and save it in Photoshop format. The file suffix should be .psd, all lowercase. Save that in the folder you've just created. Next time you only need save it, or just save, and you can get into the habit of using keystrokes to save at regular intervals. The keystrokes for save are Command S. Back to our square layer, you still have the marquee which you drew to delete the rectangle actively crawling with ants. You can press the deselect box below it, or you can get into the habit of using Command D. Now select the Move tool from the toolbar, and immediately your square will show small boxes or handles at cardinal points around the shape. We'll explore these later. First, click the tool in the middle of the square and drag it about the page. Just get the feel of moving it around. Place it towards the top of the page and roughly, but not exactly, on the center line. Now use your arrow keys on your keyboard to center the square exactly and get a sense of the increments the arrow keys perform when moving it up and down that axis. As you'll see, that axis, did I say axis? I don't know. Up and down that axis. As you'll see, they allow you to make very fine adjustments. You'll get suicidally bored if you had to use the arrows all the time to move the square up and down the page whilst keeping it on the center line. But here's where the Shift key comes in. Hold it down and grab your square as you did before and move it down the page. You should see it keeps to that center line as you move it north and south. The Shift key will also constrain the square horizontally if you move it from east to west. You need to keep the Shift key down to the last, though, because if you release it first, the square will move to wherever the Move tool comes to rest. Now create another layer by clicking on the icon and label this layer Circle. Below your workspace on the left, you'll see the rectangular marquee highlighted. Click on the circle icon to the right of it. Now go up to the toolbar and select the elliptical marquee. And using the Shift constraint, draw a perfect circle and color this some sort of yellow. Command D to deselect. Note, if your color picker doesn't appear when you go to Fill layer, click on another option, such as black, and then immediately click back to color. This should restore the picker. The Fill function often defaults to the last color used, thinking it's being helpful, and doesn't bother to show its picker again until provoked. While we're dealing in ellipses, create another layer and name it Oval. Without touching the Shift key, create a cigar-shaped oval wider than your circle and color it blue. Now create another layer, triangle. As far as I know, Elements doesn't have an obvious tool for drawing triangles, so we'll start by drawing a square. The existing layers may distract from seeing what we're doing with this layer, so we'll hide them all while we do this. Here's where you have to translate from Apple OS to PC. I press the Control key on my keyboard while clicking on the eye icon to the left of my triangle layer. This brings up a menu and I select Show, Hide, All Other Layers. You may have to left-click, press Control, both, or wait for a full moon. Create a square, center it, and color it brownish. Select the Move tool and hover around the top right small square handle in the corner of the main square. It turns into a variety of arrows as you move the cursor, but the one you want is a bent double-headed arrow, which appears about 2 millimeters out from an outer corner. I suggest you aim for the top right or top left according to your handedness, and keeping the Shift key down, drag the square, rotating it round till it becomes a diamond, constrained to the center line. Now select the rectangular marquee and draw a rectangle down the center so that it entirely covers half the brown square, making sure that it goes right through the north and south points of the diamond. Press the backspace key and you should be left with a triangle. Command D and select the Move tool, holding down the Shift, find the Rotate arrow and turn it to set the triangle pyramid fashion. If your triangle goes outside the page, drag it back in. Now select the eye icon in the triangle layer and by whatever means you've discovered, bring all the layers into view. Now, still in the Layers table, grab the square layer and move it to the top of the column. You'll notice as you move it that blue lines appear like floor numbers on a lift to locate where you are in the stack. This would help if we wanted to place the layer between two others rather than simply at the top. Now move the circle up behind the square. Keeping the shift key down, reshape the square so that it becomes a rectangle that covers at least the lower half of the circle and 3/4 of the width of the page. Move the triangle up so that its base is aligned with the base of the former square. Note, Photoshop, and presumably Photoshop Elements, used to require the Shift key to be pressed to keep elements in proportion as you resize them. Nowadays, both programs stay proportionate by default, and the Shift key is needed to change proportions, for example, converting a square to a rectangle. Now select the square layer and go to Opacity. And using the slider, move it leftwards to roughly halfway. Notice what percentage shows in the box above the slider. If you hit 50%, you're a natural. The rest of us can simply click on the number and type in 50. The slider is great for visualizing the effect of opacity, and you can leave it wherever you want. If, on the other hand, you want to set two or more elements or layers to the same opacity, entering an exact number is the way to go. You'll notice the shapes behind the former square are now showing through and their colors blending. Now move the yellow layer behind the oval and then click to select the oval layer. At the very top in Filter, select Blur and then Gaussian Blur. Set that to around 100 and move the layer to the right-hand edge. Now grab the triangle without the shift, drag its bottom center down until its base sticks out below the former square. Select the background layer, the bottom one, and fill it with a yellow paler than your circle's yellow. We're on the final stretch. Log into Box, Files, and Design Group. Open the folder and download the two files, Gods and God's Shadow. Store all your files for this project in the same folder. Open Gods in Elements. Select the Move tool, Command A to select the whole image, then Command C to copy it. Click on the tab to open your current project. The tab bar is just above the ruler, the top ruler. Click on the square layer to make sure your imported layer arrives at the top, that is, in front, the front of the image, and Command V to paste the gods in your project. Gods has an opaque white background, which we need to get rid of. Select the Magic Wand tool, the one that looks like a cartoon wand with a star head, located just below the rectangle marquee tool in the Select Tool collection, and click on the white in the image. This sets the ants crawling, but not everywhere. There are untouched bits of white between their legs and in the circular finial of the right-hand god's staff. Go to Select and down to Similar. This should pick up remaining bits of white, including odd specks in their skirts, but we'll ignore that for this session. And Backspace should remove all, leaving the gods liberated, free of the white. Position the gods on the center line and down the page so that their right hands can clearly be seen below the base of the triangle. Next, import the God's Shadow file from Box in the same way. Select all, copy and paste in the main project, and get rid of the white. Try to use as many keystrokes as you can. Next, make sure the Move tool is selected and go to Image, Transform, Free Transform. You'll now see a strip of icons on screen ending with Cancel and Done, highlighted in blue. Incidentally, these strips can be easily moved out of the way by grabbing the dotted rectangle on the left-hand side of the strip and dragging it clear of the image. Find the icon that looks like an upright hourglass with the sand at the bottom half and click on this, then on Done. Your black gods should be inverted. Now drag them down so that their feet are exactly aligned with the soles of the colored gods. Note, you can use the Shift key to ensure they stay on the center line for the journey south, and use the arrows to make fine adjustments. With the Move tool, with the Move tool still selected, the blue box and its 8 small square handles should be visible. Go up to Image, Transform, and Perspective. Now grab one of the bottom small handles and drag towards the nearest side of the page. I should say that was a corner. Now drag one of the bottom corner small handles and drag towards the nearest side of the page. You'll notice the image spreading as if it were shadows on the ground. The black shadow will be too strong, so you can use the layer's opacity to soften it, and even add some blur to make it more believable. I finished my image by making the circle white and making the oval and the square less opaque. Don't forget to save as a Photoshop file. I hope this has helped and hasn't insulted your intelligences. I'm more than happy to respond to any issues you find in your own adventures. It's worth putting Photoshop elements into a YouTube search. You'll find some folk who know what they're talking about. Also worth having a look at our Flyers archive on our website. I've most of the original files, so if any of them intrigue you, I can put them on box for you to dissect and mess about with in Elements. I was planning to use one or two anyway to illustrate the use of groups in layers. I thought the next session should deal with text. The main thing with text is to try to dissuade people from presenting you with small essays to cram onto A5. Incontinent copywriters should stay at home and focus on their novels. Their purple passages are a grey blur to pedestrians and invisible to folk on the stationary bus. Posters, unlike formal pictures, can mix abstract shapes and natural elements. They just need to attract attention. So be bold, be free. How you store stuff is important. By now you'll have devised your own systems, but you need to bear in mind that these files are big and that you may want to use something you remember creating 10 years ago. I only keep recent-ish work on my computer. The complete archive is stored on external hard drives, and I neither understand nor trust clouds. I name folders by year and venue. For example, 2025, Malmesbury. The year keeps the archive in order, though the venues will be alphabetical rather than chronological. Be as descriptive as you can about naming files. What may be glaringly vivid and seem unforgettable at the time can be puzzling years later. Well, that's it. Cheers, lads. Good luck. Next one will be dealing with text.